And apparently we are live, so I'm going to push that live now tweet. Sorry everybody for a little late start here. We're about 15 minutes late here. But we will get started in just a second. Thanks for joining us once again. I'm Sammy K. Powers, and this is the PHP Roundtable. This is a live podcast of developers discussing topics that PHP nerds care about. The ultimate goal of this podcast is to learn a little something from each other. Now, if you're listening live and want to be a part of the show, send tweets to PHP Roundtable with a question or comment, and we'll try to get your question answered or comment addressed on the show if we can. And specifically for this one, we really would love some feedback. If you're in IRC and you're in the PHP Women channel. It's like pound PHP Women or hashtag PHP Women. I don't know what the official IRC terminology for the pound sign is. But join us in there. There's going to be a little back channel there as well. And would love to get your feedback. Today we're discussing what barriers exist for women in the tech industry. And this is an episode that was inspired by a panel discussion at Midwest PHP 2015. So the person I was actually talking with at, I think it was Sunshine PHP, was Beth Tucker Long, and I was saying, hey Beth, I'd love to get you on the podcast. Like, what kind of topics would you like to talk about? And she suggested, let's do an only girl at the in the room like we did at Midwest PHP, and I was like, oh, that's a great idea. So Beth Tucker Long is the co-organizer of Madison PHP and runs the consulting business called Treeline Design, and she is joining us here on the panel. Welcome, Beth.
Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Hello, hello. Also joining us is Eryn O'Neil. She's a technical lead and developer at Clockwork, which is an interactive agency in Minneapolis. Welcome, Eryn.
Hey, guys.
Hello, hello. And also Samantha Quiñones, a principal at AOL. Welcome, Samantha.
Hey there.
She's back and she's bouncing along on her bouncy ball.
No, I'm in a real chair now. See, real chair.
Oh, you're. I didn't see you switched it out. All right. Well, she won't be bouncing then. Also, Gary Hawken was going to be joining us, but he's running into technical problems, so I don't think he'll be joining us. But if he does get join us later, it'll be great to have Gary on. So I would love to kick this off to just ask, why are we even talking about this at all? And so I want to ask Beth, you had a story about kind of setting the tone of the whole reason we're talking about this, of your experience of being a woman in tech.
Sure. So I started sort of putting together a talk about this for Midwest PHP because I've had so many people who have, we've been talking about diversity issues, and they said, oh, I really want to help women in tech, but I don't really ever see anything happen. And it's like, really? And so then when I would start telling stories, they're like, whoa, I had no idea this happened. And so I was like, okay, I wonder how many other people would like to help but don't really see that there's a problem because they've never seen it happen. And so I started putting together some stories that I've done or that have happened to me and that I've experienced, and sort of my thoughts about those things when they happen to me and what I go through. And it became a talk at Midwest PHP. So, yeah.
Well, now that was I missed the actual discussion. There was like a panel that was happening, right? And that was with you, Eryn, and Gary.
Yes.
Now, what was that like? What did you guys have a kind of a talk about? Like just kind of open it up for questions and get a lot of feedback.
Yeah, we did. We just opened it up for questions, and I was really surprised. I expected it to sort of be slow building, but we had questions right away, and we actually ran out of time for all the questions that we had, which was too bad. I wish we could have had more time even. But that's why we're here, so hopefully more people ask questions here too. And we had a lot of great questions from a wide variety of people in the audience about different aspects of, well, how do you deal with it when this happens, or has this ever happened to you, or do you really think it's a problem when this happens? We had a lot of questions kind of like that. So
I think the coolest thing about that too was that the #1 piece of feedback we got was that it wasn't long enough. And that was really, that made me feel a lot better, because going into it was terrifying.
It was very scary.
It's a super personal topic. Didn't know how people were going to respond. We definitely thought there would be crickets, and so we had like this cheat sheet of questions that we were going to like ask each other to talk about, and we didn't need it. And so it was really cool that everybody was just like, that wasn't long enough. It was terrible because it wasn't long enough. And I was like, that's the best problem. I'll take it.
Yeah, I was in the audience for the panel at Midwest, and I mean, I definitely, people were really very into it, and I think that could have gone. That was actually I blogged a couple days later about kind of needing longer sessions at conferences, specifically for things like your panel at Midwest. I mean, like, these discussions are really, really important, and it's hard to fit them into a 45-minute slot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on generating a panel for inviting specific panelists for something on this topic, Eryn, I know we had a little back and forth. I was hesitant about asking you to come and talk about this because you hadn't been on the PHP Roundtable before. I'd been trying to get you on for other topics, but their schedules were never working out. But I really didn't want your first one to be like, hey, you're a chick, so come and talk about chick things on PHP Roundtable.
Right.
And then you had mentioned, yeah, that goes under the unicorn law. So what is that?
The unicorn law is something that Emma Jane Hogbin, I can't remember her last name because she changed it. She came up with it, and it's that if you're a woman in tech, you will eventually be asked to talk about being a woman in tech. And it's really, really true. Because you're the unicorn, right? So I really appreciated, Sammy, your attention to that and concern about that, because it is by its nature a little tokenizing to be asked to talk about this. And so you desperately not wanting to make me a token and make the other women on this panel a token, appreciated that very much. And I'll get on here one day and we'll talk about, I don't know, APIs or something nerdy. But
yes.
This is also, for me, like a really important subject, because not all women want to talk about this stuff, and that's totally valid.
Absolutely.
I think it sucks that right now we're in a climate where you almost have to. Like, you can't just exist as a woman neutrally in tech right now. My goal is to make that possible one day. I don't know if it ever will happen while I'm in the industry, but that's my goal. And so for me personally, I'm totally fine talking about this stuff in the right context, in the right place, with respectful people. But yeah, not every woman wants to talk about this stuff, and it shouldn't be your burden just by virtue of the fact that you woke up and were born female.
So why is it important that we talk about this specifically? This kind of goes to anybody.
Where to start?
That kind of goes along with what I was saying earlier, where there's a lot of people who don't want this to be a problem, but don't see it happening to them or to people that they're directly with, and so they don't recognize that it is the problem that it is. And so talking about it can really help, I think, make it real for people that this is a problem, it is causing issues, and it is something that we need to be aware of and be mindful of addressing.
Absolutely. You can't fix what you don't talk about. And there are people who would argue that there's not even something here that needs to be fixed, and I think that they're wrong entirely. If you look at the stats and you look at the ratios and you hear about people's experiences, which are disproportionately negative compared to the experiences of more traditional presenting nerds, it's a problem. And so there are people who are like, every time this comes up, there's someone who has to say, oh, I wish we didn't have to talk about this, but I guess I will. And it's almost always a dude. And if it's race, it's almost always a white person. Like, it's somebody who is living in sort of a blindedness about the necessity to talk about these subjects, and that not talking about them doesn't fix them or make them go away. It just makes you, as someone who doesn't have to live with it, not have to think about it.
I think people have this tendency to try to avoid topics that make them feel guilty, and it's not a topic that should make any. I mean, there's no one person that has any responsibility for the diversity problem that we have in tech. I mean, there's nobody that we can blame for it. But I don't know. I think maybe it's human nature when there's a problem and you feel like I should be fixing it, but I don't know how to fix it. So it's my fault that it exists.
Mm-hmm.
People really they resist talking about it to almost an extreme point, it seems like, in some cases.
I think you're totally right, because it's the diversity problem in tech, whether it's gender, sexuality, race, like a million things, it's not one thing. It's death by 10,000 paper cuts. It's a leaky pipeline. It's whatever metaphor you want to use, and that means that we're all culpable, like us three even included, like all people in this system are part of this system. So we're all slightly culpable. So thinking about this stuff, it doesn't help. I mean, if somebody does something egregious, they should be called out. But if we really want to change things, what we need to do is change our own thoughts and our own behaviors in very small but deliberate ways, and that's on everybody. And you're totally right, Samantha, that people are being asked to change how they are, and people are being asked to recognize that they did a thing potentially that is not super welcoming or not super great, and that sucks. Like, no one wants to hear that.
Yeah.
So we have back-to-back episodes of things people don't want to hear. We just finished up with the alcoholism and unfit culture of PHP. So viewers are going down like crazy. No, but it is interesting that there was quite a bit of response on that last topic of people were like, oh, why are we talking about alcoholism? And it got like the most unlikes on YouTube and stuff, and I feel like that topic is just really uncomfortable. But this one has actually this topic that we're talking about today is actually been quite a positive response, which I'm really happy to see. So I guess there's always maybe you shouldn't do two back-to-back uncomfortable to talk about things on a podcast, but you live and you learn. But Chris Holt on IRC was saying, I think there should be more men talking about diversity in our industry giving talks. So like that kind of talks about like at conferences, and I know there's been issues with having mainly male-dominated speakers, but there's been a lot of change recently to kind of change that. What is the advice to conference organizers about having women come in and speak, or is there like an advice, like a general?
So I actually have. Oh, sorry. Go on.
How for conferences, like how to encourage women to speak? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, just any advice on kind of making sure that the number of female speakers is actually increased. So there's more of
Sure. So I heard two very different topics of discussion in that section. So starting with, let's start with about having women versus men speaking about diversity issues. I know Eryn has some stuff she wants to say on that, so I'm going to say one quick thing first, and I'm going to turn it over to her.
I really want you guys to talk, because I could go on for a long time.
Yeah, and then we can circle back to the conference organizers thing, because I'm a women speaker and a conference organizer, so I can talk to two different sides to that as well. But let's circle back to that in a minute. So as far as having men versus women speaking about diversity, I think obviously in conversations everyone should be talking about diversity, but as far as making presentations, I hesitate to say that we need more men making presentations on it, because part of the issue with diversity is that women's voices are not being heard as often as men's voices, and so having men talk about how women need to be heard more in IT is a little counterproductive, I think. Also, coming from a viewpoint of, from my own personal viewpoint, I feel that arguments are more compelling when they come from a personal point of view. It's one thing to say, well, it makes people uncomfortable if you do this, but to say it makes me uncomfortable when you do this, I feel can be more compelling. And so to have a woman speaking about how diversity issues affect her, to me seems more compelling than to have a male saying, statistics show this, or whatever kind of thing. So, all right.
No, I completely agree with you on the elevating female voices. I think the intent in the question is good, and there's some nuance that is worth defining, which is to say that it's allyship is incredibly important. It's essential. So women, I guess not every activist would agree with this, but my personal philosophy is women need male allies, trans people need cis allies, black people need white allies. Like every group needs allies, but the role of an ally is not necessarily to be in the front. It is to help elevate the voices of the people who you are trying to help. So if in the process of talking about needing diversity and needing things like that, you are telling women how to speak or you're telling women to be quiet, that's counterproductive. If you're speaking in such a way that you're elevating those voices, that you're letting women speak for themselves, that you're letting different groups speak for themselves, and you're just using your position as somebody with like relative privilege in this group, just as somebody that gets looked at, you know, like you're a white guy, people look at you and they hear what you say differently than they hear what we say. You can use that power, that social power, to help people pay attention to us. That's awesome. If you use that social power to help people pay attention to you instead of us, you're the problem. In a nutshell.
I think you both hit the nail.
Oh no, it froze.
Oh no.
We're still here.
I think we lost her.
Oh god, oh no.
You're still here.
You're back. You're back. It's good.
Samantha,
Yeah,
you were
no,
about to say something?
I think you both hit the nail right on the head. I mean, it's there's lots of guys talking about lots of things, and that's great. But if you want to help and bring these issues to the forefront, you know what really helps is like Eryn said, you know, lifting up other people's voices, kind of helping to shift the culture to not accept silencing of silenced people's voices as being something that's acceptable. You know what I mean? Like when people are standing up to shut other people up, don't just let that go unchallenged.
I would say too, a great time for, you know, men to speak up about diversity is in an environment where there's not a woman who could speak up or doesn't feel comfortable speaking up. Then, you know, starting the conversation and making it more of an environment where women feel comfortable being able to speak up about things would definitely be helpful as well. So there are lots of opportunities where it would be helpful.
Tangentially related, a question by Michael Cullum on Twitter. Do you think there is too much focus on gender diversity compared to race diversity in tech?
Too much? I mean, I don't know. I don't know that we talk much about racial diversity in tech at all, and that's also a problem. I mean, as bad as the gender diversity issue in technology is, I mean, I have no statistics to back this up, but at least from the people that I see at conferences, I think I see a lot more women as a percentage of the population of attendees compared to people of color, and I think that's also a harder. I mean, again, you're in the same position because I don't know if it's entirely appropriate sometimes for white people to get up and talk about racial diversity issues, and I think you have the same sourcing problem, but magnified. I mean, as you know, I'm Latina and I'm mixed race, but it's not. You know, I don't have that. I don't have that experience to speak of it, so it's not something that I really talk about a lot because I don't feel very comfortable talking about it. But it's definitely something that we need to talk about more, but I have no idea how to go about making that happen.
I think in the phrase of the question, I don't think there's too much focus on gender diversity. I think there's not enough focus on race diversity, if that helps. But then again, you know, gender diversity is something that I can speak to a lot more than I can speak to race diversity. So again, talking about, you know, having the allies more promote the actual voices being affected. With race diversity, that's a tough question for us to address here because we're all the allies here. So yeah, so I would definitely love to see more diversity in race and hear more discussions about it. I'm just not sure how to necessarily push that as much.
So there's this group called PHP Women, and I know there was some misunderstandings about what that group was all about, and there's some people that were saying, well, just because you're a woman, you've kind of siloed yourself into this kind of wall garden community or something like that. Is that the word? I can't remember if that was the exact way you say it. But what is PHP Women, and what is its role in the community?
So PHP Women is an organization originally started to sort of help increase diversity in the community, but also help support people who might feel more like outsiders in the community. And obviously, being named PHP Women, the original focus was more on women, but has expanded to encompass any people that maybe need some extra support getting involved. They provide mentorship and assistance, or even just helping connect people at conferences, so you know that there'll be a friendly face at a conference you're going to and things like that. So, they're doing scholarship work as well, try to get more people involved in in-person activities. So, yeah.
Cool. So it's more open. It's not, you don't have to be a woman to be a part of PHP Women.
No, you don't. Nope.
I hear it's a really great place to actually learn. I think Cal Evans was talking about in the IRC channel, which I've kind of been moderating here just to or scanning for feedback for PHP Roundtable stuff. But he was saying that you could go in there and just ask like the most simple, easiest beginner newbie question, and people will always try to answer in a way that's kind of like a helpful way, not just RTFM, read the freaking manual. So that's cool. I'm glad that community exists, because there's too many times where people will feel like they get overwhelmed by just negativity when they're trying to learn something new. I wanted to have my sister come on. Mary Audrey. She works with adventure tourism, which is a male-dominated industry, and she's really the one who, before I even went to my first PHP conference, she was like, "Hey, if you see any girl there, you'd ask them. You ask them if they experience the same problems I have," because she deals with a lot of issues relating to how men will just not take her seriously because she leads like a huge group, and or have issues with authority and things like that. Is that something that you also run into? And this can be, I know we lost Eryn, so hopefully she'll be able to pop back in. But
yeah, definitely. I don't know. I probably overuse this anecdote a lot, but I used to be a team lead, and I was responsible for hiring, and interviewed tons and tons of candidates every year. And on more than one occasion, I would be sitting in a conference room interviewing a candidate with a coworker, and I would ask the question of the candidate, and the candidate would then turn to my male coworker and answer the question to him. Which is just like a kind of a weird thing. And again, none of these candidates who did this were doing it to be jerks. It's just this weird, almost subconscious bias happening there. And these kind of weird interactions. I hesitate to use the term microaggressions because there's a lot of feels around it, but these kind of like little subtle things that maybe if it's not happening to you, you wouldn't even notice it happening. They definitely pop up a lot. Hey!
Sorry. It froze, and I was like, they all hate what I'm saying. And then I realized, no, it was just not working.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Anyway, sorry.
No worries. I was just asking about my sister is in a male-dominated industry, and she was telling me to ask specifically at my first conference, like if female any other woman I encountered there was dealing with the same problems with authority, and that like men wouldn't take her seriously in a position of authority. I'm sure Eryn's got some thoughts on that as well.
There's not much I don't have thoughts on, but. No, this specifically is an issue in my job. So, but I know Samantha was talking when I got here. Am I cutting anyone off?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So as a tech lead, my job is to walk into a room with a client and convince them that we are the right shop, they made the right choice, we're super smart, we're going to save them. Technology's scary, but we got it covered, you know. And I have to convince them that I am the technical brain on it, and they're going to be in good hands. And on the one hand, I'm actually surprised how few times there's an issue. I'm like pleasantly surprised by people. On the other hand, I absolutely have meetings where I walk in the room and you can just see it on their face. They're like, this is what we get? Like this or late 20s chick, she's going to make my internet? And it's like, yep, I am. But yeah, some of the worst calls are definitely not clients so much because they're not tech people. So they have sort of an old boys club business thing, but they don't necessarily like, you know, worry about it from a tech point of view. But the worst calls are when I get on the phone with the client's IT and it's my voice and their voice. And they have to, you know, we're talking about DNS, we're talking about something really like low level, really technical, and I have had to have my boss come on the phone because they just won't deal with me. Like they won't interact with me in a productive way. And my male boss come on the phone. And that it's just ridiculous. It's not about the answers I'm giving or anything. It's just these dudes who clearly have decided before I started talking that nothing I could say would be useful. And it's beyond frustrating. And it keeps me from getting my job done, you know, beyond that too. So yeah, that's a real thing that happens to real people.
Yeah, I've experienced when I used to have to talk to vendors earlier in my career. It was, yeah, that would happen a lot. You're talking to some you know, IBM support engineer who's been in the business since 1957, and they're just not having it.
Yep, phone is the worst.
It is because you're like I'm just trying to get you know, I have a piece of hardware that's down and I need to get it.
Can we just get this done? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what industry is your sister in, Sammy?
It's adventure tourism. She runs a zipline course.
Cool.
It was in California, but she moved to Tennessee recently, and she was going to join us, but she unfortunately had a scheduling conflict.
Mm.
I was really hoping to see her thoughts on or see some of these things that we're dealing with for women in tech and how they transition into other industries, maybe even in dance. I know me and Eryn had a little discussion about some gender biases that exist in the dance community, like, oh, you're a female, you must follow. You're a male, you must lead. And that's been breaking down in the swing community a little bit, the West Coast swing community specifically. How is that happening in the Lindy Hop community? Or I know you're not really as much in the community as you used to be, but what kind of things have you been seeing there?
Oh man, it's subcultures. I love subcultures. They're so fascinating to me because a subculture is just this little ecological subset of the main culture, right? So it's like we have these subcultures and we all think that ours is great, and you know, as dancers, like we're open and we're welcoming and we love everybody, and it's like, well, the greater culture is kind of sexist and crappy, so you are too. Like, nothing personal. So some of the stuff we see there, it's very different because there are a more equal representation of genders. We have like really serious racial diversity issues, but gender-wise, you're at least more or less 50-50 men and women. And then we even, as a blues community, have a lot of non-binary identifying people too. So these conversations are really different because you show up and there's this assumption that men will lead the dance and women will follow the dance. And it also starts to roll out into men will lead the classes and thus get paid more and get hired more. And those walls are starting to get broken down because it's just such a very different conversation when you show up and they're like, only men lead, and then I lead, and I'm like, look, it's not true, you know, like it's just such a different approach to like performing gender if you really want to get like Judith Butler about it. So since you're actually literally performing gender, it just makes a really different conversation. So it's fun, but it's different. Yeah, and it never goes away. This stuff never goes away. Yeah, it's everywhere.
And it gets deeper too. Like I love to follow as a male, and there's some videos of other males following, but then like it's great to see that. But then there's this sort of like even deeper topic of how they're kind of portraying their role, because some of them almost like mock. yeah, they mock it, like almost like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm gonna be like really flamboyant and kind of almost make fun of.
Yep.
Like, and this was the person who posted this was a gay male, and he was kind of commenting. He's like, I really like this dance, but I'm not really sure I like how this looks like they're mocking it. So there's all these kind of subtle ways that we don't even think about it. Like I know, Samantha, you just commented on sort of subconsciously these things that are kind of part of the culture. Maybe even how we even address a group of all females. Like I've called you guys, and I just did it while in the process of explaining that I'm saying guys. And before we came on, I was kind of talking about this exact topic, and that a girl I used to date, she would address an entire group of mixed genders as girls, and she wasn't a native speaker of English, so I was like, oh, you mean guys, because that's how we say it in English, and she's like, no, it shouldn't be guys because there's girls here too, and I was like, oh, well, that's actually really cool, like, and so, what are your thoughts on these like little subtle like cultural biases that exist all over the place, where even like we try to like make a point not to say guys, we just say y'all instead, I guess.
I think there's definitely evidence of just sort of a deep-rooted cultural viewpoint, I guess. I know I have problems with the you guys too. That's very, very common in the Midwest. And it's kind of because I think the alternative is you all, and that's from down south. And so then it just sounds like you're trying to be from down south. I don't know. But we need some sort of alternative, because I mean it does sort of set the tone of, well, the men in the group matter and the women are just there with the men,
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it sounds so wrong if you call a mixed group a mixed bunch of people girls versus guys, is I think an interesting evidence that there is this sort of bias against women, and that it's okay to be a guy if you're a woman, but it's definitely not okay to be called a girl if you're a guy, And so just starting from that basis right there, you can see that there's already a disadvantage.
I think there's a society-wide, there's sort of idea that male is the default gender. If a person is male unless they're other, right? Which is messed up when you're talking about, sexual, you're talking roughly 50-50. And there's a lot of people in the middle, but, a very small percentage of the population. But definitely in society, always, I mean, and it's kind of funny when you're talking about, like, when you talk about in Spanish, when you're addressing a group of people, like a group of women, you use a feminine plural noun. If there's one dude in that mix, it goes male. Right? But it's not the other way. It's weird.
Yeah, you see that in a lot of languages, and it's interesting that I saw a tweet. Somebody said that it's weird how in the English language somebody will have no problems calling a boat a she, but have problems calling a transgender person a she.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a really cool Google Ventures talk that I saw, and I can get you the link if you want to put it in the notes. But there's a really interesting thing that they were studying at Google about hiring and getting more diversity in their hires. And so they started studying unconscious bias. And one of the experiments that they did was they had the group of people, okay, raise your left hand if it's something that's male, or it's something that deals with science, and then raise your right hand if it's female, or it deals with like social studies. And so they had these topics, and people were just flipping their hands up left and right. And then they swapped it, and they said, okay, now if it's male and it deals with, like, I forget what it was, home economics or something, and female, or it deals with engineering. And people had so much of a harder time with their hands because they would automatically raise their male hand when it was like an engineering or a science topic. And it was amazing how difficult that was for a large group of people to do. It's so ingrained.
Yeah, those studies are really fascinating. I've heard the one about it would show like some sort of positive word and then show like a black person versus a white person, and then everybody would not be racist, of course, and they would click the right answer. Like it would show Obama and there would be positive things, or like president and like leader and all this stuff, but it would show that there would be like microsecond delay every time it was a black person. Like people would hesitate, and it shows that everybody is just a little bit racist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of ingrained, right?
It also shows that people are capable of overcoming their unconscious biases.
True. I like it. And again, you can't talk about, or you can't fix what you don't talk about. So recognizing those microsecond delays, which are pretty well documented, I've seen those studies too. They're very compelling, and they go deeper than that. They're really disturbing. If you want some late Saturday reading, but yeah, like that stuff is so automatic and so ingrained. So to recognize that it's just like it's kind of your neural, like your basic neural programming. It just is. Like it's not a value judgment necessarily. Like it just is. You're not a bad person for it. But now what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do about it?
Riley Major's been posting on Twitter. Has been posting a lot of great resources.
He's live tweeting like a fiend. I love it.
I know, it's great. He suggested using folks to address mixed groups, so that's kind of a good one. He also has mentioned the Code Manifesto by Kayla Daniels. What is the Code Manifesto? Have any of you kind of messed with or seen that?
I know I've come across it, but I don't know a lot about it.
Was this the one for open source projects?
I think so. Yeah, yes. She gave a talk about it at PHP, or at Laracon last year. And it's basically, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's basically sort of an agreement that everyone who participates in an open source project will be respectful and tolerant, and that people who are not respectful or tolerant will be excluded from the project, to try to create a more welcoming environment for participation in the project.
Kind of like a code of conduct for open source.
Yes, that's what I was trying to. I'm like, it's like that thing, but for open source projects. But I didn't want to say that because that sounds dumb. So thank you. That was what I was trying to come up with.
So Dev Divas on Twitter asked a question. Could the panelists please comment on imposter syndrome?
Yes.
Eryn, you said you got this.
I mean, I think any of us got this one.
Yeah, imposter syndrome is very difficult for everyone, but I think that there are certain things about being a woman in tech that make it ever so slightly more difficult. I know for me personally, you know, I feel nervous getting up in front of a group giving a talk about something because, you know, I don't know everything about the topic. What if someone asks me a question I don't know, and then everyone will think I'm dumb? But you add on to that another layer, because if I say something that people disagree with, or if I don't know the answer to a question, people don't just think that I'm dumb, they think that all women devs are dumb. And so it's this extra layer of pressure of, you know, oh my gosh, I am letting down my entire gender if I don't know everything about this topic when I get on stage. One time I was giving... Right? It's what?
You don't want to become that anecdote that person...
I know, right? I don't want to be the excuse to not have a female give a talk at a future conference because girls don't know what they're talking about. But I was getting up to give a talk one time, and it was pretty early on in my speaking career, and I overheard some people talking, and they weren't trying to talk quietly. They were just talking in the room while I was there. And I overheard one of the people who had just walked in say, "Oh, good, a girl speaker. I'm too tired to read code tonight." And then,
wow.
This tell that story. I get so angry.
I know. But I had this moment of absolute horror because I was giving a talk on usability, and I had no code in my talk, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm fulfilling their stereotype. They're going to think I can't code. They're going to think that girls can't code. I'm just like, it was just this horrible moment of, oh my gosh, now I'm letting down women everywhere by not being super technical in this talk and having code.
Reach it.
And yeah, and so imposter syndrome is a huge issue, And not only that, but
Nope.
not only that, but it's not even just the topic of the talk, but you know, I used to do comment cards after my talks, and I stopped doing it because the comments that I got were extremely rarely helpful, but most often just insulting and degrading. And you know, not only do I have to worry about being the best, absolute, most knowledgeable person on this topic, and I have to know the answers to any question they might ask, but I also have to make sure that I am dressed perfectly, that I am just the right amount of casual but not too slutty or anything, and like fit this for everyone who might have varying opinions on how this is going to work and differing opinions on how this should work and such. So yeah, it can be very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally, it's getting a little bit outside the bounds of imposter syndrome, but your story about giving a UX talk, I pretty much only give soft talks, and by pretty much I mean actually. I actually only give soft talks so far. And I'm technical. I'm a tech lead. I'm a dev. Like, I have a degree in computer science. That's not in question. And I start all of my talks by saying that. And all of my talks, although they're soft, are very rooted in developer point of view. And still, I will always be misidentified. Whatever non-dev thing people think I am just depends on which talk I gave. If I give the tech lead talk, people think I'm a PM or a business analyst. If I give a talk on incident management, then I'm a project manager. If I give my UX talk, then I'm a UX person. And I had once a conference I spoke at. The person who selected my talk and brought me out afterwards told me that they thought I was a designer because I dressed too well. And I was just like, I don't even know what to do with that. That's not okay. And it's also worth noting that in this case, too well meant a really casual dress and like flats. Like, I was not, you know, primmed, polished. I just had female clothes on, basically. And the person who read my abstract and my bio and brought me to speak at their conference told me that they thought I was a designer. And I was just like, I mean, how do you get past that? Like, they knew that I wasn't, but they had just this level of bias that kept making them think they saw something that wasn't there. So.
I've recently started, you know, most of the earlier when I went in my speaking career, I mostly gave only technical talks, and I've recently started giving more soft talks, and it's kind of weird, the feedback that I've gotten from soft talks. Well, mostly it's been positive, but you get weird things that it's like, wow, you really seem to know devs pretty well. You must spend a lot of time around engineers. I'm like, well, yeah.
What's wrong with people?
Like, I mean, my job title is not just, you know, for decoration.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Twitter asks, what stereotypes are you guilty of, and are all stereotypes bad?
Oh, lots of them.
Probably a lot of the same ones that everyone else is guilty of.
Yeah.
Stereotypes are, I mean, I think it's normal. It's what you choose to do with those stereotypes. I think that's important.
I mean, it's how our brains work. It's the human condition to categorize people and decide to group people. I mean, it's a survival technique in a very evolutionary sense. There's too many people, and you need to make quick decisions. So yeah, tons of stereotypes in my brain. But you know, then the operative thing there is to notice you're doing it and not be a jerk about it, and try to go past it. Like, I'll admit on a recording that's going to go onto the internet for everybody that, so no pressure. I live in Minneapolis, which is a particularly segregated, particularly Scandinavian white city. And I'm from Chicago, so I grew up in a much more diverse place. But the longer I'm here, the more I realize that I am getting very real subconscious racial biases, because the reality of where I live is that I only see particularly black, but really any non-white people in certain circumstances. And because that's just the city, that's just how the city's laid out, and it's total shit. It's and it's happening to me, even though I'm somebody who like recreationally reads anti-racist literature. And so it's a super real thing, and it's just something your brain does, and it's something that every time I realize I'm thinking that stuff, I hate myself for it, and I get really mad, but all I can do is recognize it and try to fix it. So there you go, Internet. That's my confession.
I mean, it's so. I mean, I grew up poor and in an area that was not, majority white by any stretch of the imagination. But as I've advanced in my career and sort of, joined solidly middle class world and moved into neighborhoods that were more and more overwhelmingly white and shopped in neighborhoods that are overwhelmingly white, you start to pick up these cultural. I don't want to say your group affiliation, but you just start to absorb this stuff from the people around you, and it's unsettling. It's definitely unsettling.
Well, and that's why I think that some of the biggest way to combat this stuff is to be in the presence of the people that you're starting to, that you're like, how do I become a better ally to Black people? Hang out with some Black people. How do I become a better ally to women? Hang out with some women. Just go be with people and talk to them and recognize them as human beings and hear their stories, and don't let yourself develop those stereotypes if at all possible, because you have too much real data to get in the way of this lazy categorizational thinking.
I think that's key, and it goes back to the other part of of what you mentioned, Sammy. Are any stereotypes okay? I mean, I don't want to make value judgments about stereotypes, but I think anytime you're approaching another human being that you don't know and pretending like you know who they are and where they're coming from and what they're about, you're making a big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
It's cliche, but everyone is different. They have they got their own deal going on, and you have to approach individuals as individuals.
I like that. That's a good way to put that.
I think too, most stereotypes are about negative things, not necessarily about positive things. So if you have a stereotype that is positive, then that one might be okay. Oh, I think all women developers are super smart and awesome. That one's probably okay. But, that's generally not how stereotypes work. But I completely agree that you should get to know people and not try to judge them just based on something that you knew previously about someone else or about a group of people that you've heard. And I would say, too, one of the stereotypes that I struggle with is that older, overweight male programmers are going to hate me and be mean to me. And that is one. Okay, we're laughing, but they're not.
We're laughing because we see ourselves in it.
I know. So
yeah.
there are stereotypes that work that way as well too. That and that's not a good stereotype either. So we're talking about ones that we suffer from, and that's one I'm consciously trying to work on, aside from the obvious ones about race and gender and diversity things. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the IRC people are still talking about guys and folks, and some people are suggesting peeps. It's just the conversation's going on. Michael C says he's like, I like peeps, and then Chris Holt's like, I like homies. So there's lots of alternatives. None of them are really standardized yet, I guess. But I'm loving that Jeremy McCullough's in here just doing his normal crazy funny stuff he's always saying. So he had a comment on how Eryn was saying that the conference organizer said, oh, you dress so nicely. He said, makeup staff for tech conferences should carry mustard and ketchup package to apply stains to shirts before going on stage for that authentic, tired developer look.
It's probably good that I'm not following this, because now I have IRC open, and yeah, this is ridiculous.
Oh man, he's always fun to have on. He's so witty and full of puns. I've never seen someone generate so many puns. Christopher Hull, actually, he's on IRC and Twitter, but on Twitter he's asking if things are actually getting better. Is this all doom and gloom?
No, it's absolutely getting better, but it's not good yet.
No, the fact that we can have this conversation absolutely is proof that it's getting better. Because, oh God, for so many reasons, but one of them being that I would have been terrified, absolutely terrified, to even put myself out there in this way a few years ago for sure. And without the community, like the PHP community in particular, being just awesome. Like, you guys are really nice and welcoming and sweet. And I know that if somebody was shitty to me, you'd all have my back. But it's terrifying to stand up as a woman and be like, I have a problem, I'm complaining about a thing, look at me, because what happens to women who do that is that they get targeted. And it's really bad. I mean, there's the Gamergates, there's the, accusations of making up rapes and sexual assaults. I mean, women are constantly accused of all this stuff, right? But the fact that we can even talk about this stuff, and we're on your podcast, and like people are watching live, like instead of working, so you're caught. That's good. That's a good sign. I mean, we have a long way to go, but it's a good sign that you guys care at all.
I think we're in a better position, I think, in the PHP community than some of the other communities that I'm involved in. And I think there's probably a lot of reasons for that. I think a big part is that this community has well-established female heroes in it. I mean, there are women engineers in this community that the entire community looks up to, and I definitely think that goes a long way to changing those perceptions.
Jeremy McCullough just asked a question on IRC about if you've been to other conferences that aren't PHP specific, like other languages or other conferences, what's going on in other communities that you'd like to see in the PHP centric, or that you would like PHP centric conferences to emulate. I tried to reword it and then I just started reading it, so it just kind of came out all weird. But did you understand what I was trying to say?
Yeah. I think of the conferences that I've been to outside of the PHP sphere, I mean, they're doing all the same things. They have codes of conduct and they have rules and stuff like that. I kind of feel like what's the term I'm trying to think of? Like kind of like the chorus that gets kicked up, the reactionary chorus, is a lot louder and stronger. I think there's a lot fewer people that actively stand up and tell people to knock it off when they're being dickbags than maybe we have.
I'm sorry, I'm still catching up with all the activity going on IRC and Twitter.
I know, that's what just happened to me. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, there's This is great. I mean, I'm loving that there's lots of people chiming in, and Riley Major's been live tweeting this entire thing, and Dev Divas as well on Twitter. So this has been a lot of people are really getting involved on this. So that's, like you said, Eryn, this is like encouraging to see this progress, and how this is a topic that is less and less uncomfortable to talk about. Like same with like mental health and some other things that are becoming less and less uncomfortable to talk about, and I think that's a great step forward. We started a little late, and we're kind of getting to that point where we need to start wrapping up a little bit, unfortunately. I did want to point out, completely unrelated, but tangentially, because we're on PHP Roundtable, this is the official one-year episode, or one-year anniversary of the PHP Roundtable. Started this on this day, exactly 1 year ago. So it's been fun. It's been an amazing journey. I've met amazing people like you three in real life conferences, and to meet with people on Hangouts has just been so cool to get involved in the community like this. So I've talked with a couple people at where was it? Laracon. Brady Johnson, for example, was talking to me about starting a podcast. So Brady, I'm calling you out. Officially, you have to start your podcast on this 1 year anniversary. We'll be looking forward to your amazing podcasts. Brady Johnson, I'm saying your name several times so that you have no excuse. Also, there was two brothers, and I'm not remembering their names off the top of my head. I should have had that ready. But the two brothers who were wanting to do kind of the podcast where they were discussing tech together. So if you're listening, two brothers who I'm sorry I forgot your names, but I will call you out maybe in the next episode so that you have no excuse either. So definitely, if you're thinking about doing anything in the community, getting more involved, doing a podcast or anything, definitely do it. Just ask anybody who's been on the PHP Roundtable. Ask me. We're all here. We want to help you, and we want to make this community better in any way we can. So Speaking of that, one of my favorite segments that we wrap each show with is developer shoutout, and this is a segment that recognizes a developer that has contributed a lot to the community. So what we do is we send them a little thank you note. It's handwritten by me, and it says thank you for your contributions in the community. And sponsoring this episode, there is this awesome little gift we send them. It's a $50 Amazon gift card, and Laracast.com is the official sponsor who's making this possible. And if you don't know, Laracast is the Netflix for developers, and it's basically a screencast by Jeffrey Way, who does all kinds of cool stuff in PHP, shows you how to do whatever you want to do. If you're just wanting to learn more things, definitely check out Laracast.com. And for this episode, I asked the panel to nominate somebody who they thought really did a lot in the community. Obviously, it's to recognize cool people, and they chose Joanna Terry. So Beth, why did you pick Joanna Terry?
Joanna Terry works with London PHP, or might be PHP London, I can't remember, but mostly PHP UK conference. And this last year they announced that they were going to be starting up a diversity scholarship program, and she's done a ton of work raising money for it and doing research on the best way to do it, and has just put a ton of work into this diversity scholarship. And I'm really excited to see who gets to come to the next conference because of it. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So Joanna, I will be contacting you via probably on Twitter or something, trying to get your snail mail address so that I can mail this out to you. $50 Amazon gift card. Thanks, Laracast. And Jeffrey Way, he's a beast. He's been sponsoring so many of these developer shoutouts, and we've recognized so many developers. And I'm wanting to have a segment a feature on the website that kind of totals up all the gifts that have been made possible because of Laracast. So thanks again for the continued support. Finally, let's get to some shameless plugs as we wrap this thing up. We'll kick it off with Beth. Do you have anything that you would like to shamelessly promote?
Gee, I don't know. I would love to shamelessly plug my conference, Madison PHP Conference. I am super excited. And someone had asked earlier about what conference organizers can do. And since I'm one of the organizers of Madison PHP, I will say that what we've been trying to do to increase diversity at our conference is we've been having workshops for how to speak at a conference. We've been mentoring individual people in our user group to encourage them to speak. And then when we do the call for papers, we specifically contact people and say, hey, we heard you did a talk on this topic. It'd be awesome if you could submit that to our conference, kind of a thing. So we did some of that as well. One thing we did not do, which I strongly discourage everyone from doing, is say, hey, we heard you're a girl. Would you like to come speak at our conference?
Yeah.
Please do not do that to people. And if you try to disguise it with, hey, we'd really like you to speak at our conference, and you don't say why, everyone knows it's because you're just wanting us because we're a girl. So take the time, look at our talks, ask us to specifically speak on a topic we know about or something. That really helps a lot from a speaker's point of view as well. Anyways, but Madison PHP Conference is November 14th, madisonphpconference.com.
Excellent. And excellent advice for conference organizers as well. That's excellent. Eryn, do you have anything that you would like to promote?
I really don't. I'm going to speak at Madison. I'm going to speak at Pacific Northwest, so you should go to those. I'll plug other people's stuff right now. Yeah.
That's so generous.
Yeah, you can have my shout out. They're gonna be good conferences though. The lineups are really great. So if you're in either parts of the country, whether Madison or Seattle, you should take a trip. Go check them out. Conferences are really fun.
All right. Yeah, for sure. So it's changed my perspective on everything going to conferences. So if you haven't done it yet, definitely do it. Samantha, have you got any of those shamelessnesses of promotionesses?
I'm going to promote Girls Who Code. I got involved with Girls Who Code this summer. They actually had their first summer immersion program. So if you're not familiar with it, they offer a 7-week program to young women who are in high school from age 15 to 17, where they learn computer science and how to build robots and just how to do awesome things with technology. And we talk a lot when we talk about diversity. Often, like, the pipeline comes up, and if you want to talk about the pipeline, these kids are it, and they're amazing, and they need our support. I got really emotional. I was at the graduation ceremony a couple weeks ago. I got really emotional, and I was tweeting about how if if we fail these girls and don't bring them into the industry, what we're losing is tremendous. So, look into Girls Who Code. They have chapters in more and more cities every year. They're always looking for people to guest speak, for people to take their time and teach, or just to donate money. So check them out.
Great. Also, this is the first ever shameless plug coming from Twitter. But since Dev Divas has been so interactive, shameless plug for Dev Divas, amazing women who shaped computer tech, coming soon to PHP World and PHP Meetup at Madison.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So this isn't an invitation to have everybody start spamming through Twitter or shameless promotions at the end of PHP roundtables, but that one, I let that one slip in just because Dev Divas has been kind of part of the show too.
And it's highly relevant.
It is highly relevant as well, yes. So thank you everyone for joining. Our next episode will be service-oriented architecture and microservices in PHP. That's a mouthful, and it's not a soft talk. It's not a soft discussion. We've done so many soft discussions. It's time to do a few hard ones here and there. So I think that one's going to be next, or there's going to be a little face-off, Paul M. Jones versus Jeffrey Way. They were having a little back and forth at Laracon, and thought, this would be a great discussion to have on the PHP Roundtable. Not like a Fox News type, or as Cal Evans likes to say, the Fox News arguing thing. It's about just having a discussion with smart people, and so don't be coming to look for drama, but come to learn something. So if you have something you'd like to share about any topic that PHP nerds care about, you can just hit me up on Twitter, PHP Roundtable, or Sammy K. That's my Twitter handle, and would love to see you get on this panel here and have some discussions. So awesome. Thanks so much, Beth and Eryn and Samantha, for coming on and talking about this, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you, Sammy.